Hey everybody, KC here. So I'm at Western Michigan University. Actually, I'm in Kalamazoo, right next door to Western Michigan University at the Radisson, where the food industry program at Western Michigan is hosting a conference this week. And it's really been kind of interesting so far. It's just been a few hours as I record this. And as you can see, they're just sort of breaking things down as they have a reception for Western Michigan foods. It's kind of a cool idea. But to me, the most interesting person to speak today, and he did it in two different places, was Vivek Sankaran, who is the CEO of Albertsons. And naturally, he was talking a little bit about the merger, right? He was talking about what's going on with the merger with Kroger. And he made some really interesting observations. On the one hand, he talked about, he said that, there's basically two types of mergers, and not surprisingly, he said there's the kind where one company, the company being acquired is a troubled company, and there's the other kind of merger where the company that's being acquired is a healthy company, but you need the combination of two healthy companies to be a better competitor. Listen, that's something the FTC is going to have to sort out, but I can understand completely why it's being positioned that way. But I did think he was also interesting when he was talking to the students, and he did a little session away from the major group, when he was talking to students about how they should think about work. And he talked about the notion that he thinks that companies, and he would classify Albertsons as being this, is that as they're bringing people back to the office, he wants them to think of it as presence with a purpose. And he really wants to position Albertsons as a purpose-driven organization, maybe not in the quote-unquote political sense, but he wants people to think that way. He's very focused in his conversation with students and even here in the general session about the notion that they serve localities, they serve communities, and that's how they have to think of that things. He did talk a little bit even about how they try to create this line in between centralized management and divisions that are able to do what they want to do when they want to do it, and trying to figure out where that line is. I think that's kind of interesting. It's fascinating to think about the idea that there are innovations that the company may want at headquarters that are maybe not filtering into the organizations. If there's resistance, they just have to figure out how to break down that resistance. But he talked to the students about the fact that growth is oxygen, and that's a really compelling metaphor, if you will. Growth is oxygen. If companies don't grow, eventually they're not going to be able to breathe and not be able to provide opportunities to the people who work there. He also made this really interesting observation. He said basically at one point, he goes, that there are no a-holes in my company. And I thought that was really kind of fascinating. Now, I got a chance to talk to him afterwards, and because Vivek's been on Morning News Beat, and I got a chance to chat with him a bit. And I said, I have a question. You said there are no assholes in your company. Is that wishful thinking, or do you really believe that? He sort of conceded the fact that there probably are somewhere. There are some people who would be described that way within the company. There's a lot of people who work for Albertsons, but he said when I meet them, they're gone. So his goal is to drive the assholes out of Albertsons. I think that's a noble goal. He talked to the students a lot about the idea of taking risk in their careers, and he even said when he was young he didn't take enough risk and wishes he had done more of that. But to me, again, the thing he talked most about that I thought was interesting was the notion of driving friction out of the shopping experience. And he talked a lot about the fact that there's two different kinds of shopping. There's mindful shopping, and then there's mindless shopping. And he said their goal, especially in the area of mindless shopping, is to drive friction out of that, to make it as easy as possible. And I think that's really something that more retailers have to think about. They do have to think about the idea that there's different kinds of shopping. And wherever you can eliminate friction is good, but especially out of the so-called mindless shopping experience. Listen, it's been a fascinating thing. It's fascinating to go to conferences like this where there's students and executives. You get a lot of different kinds of questions. You're listening to this on a Thursday, and this afternoon I'm actually going to be moderating a panel on leadership, which is going to be, I think, interesting to everybody. So anyway, I'm reporting to you from Western Michigan University. Thrilled to be here. That's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.